Hey everybody. Tonight we're going to do a little bit older movie than I usually do, and it was brought to mind after watching the recent movie The Lodge, which I didn't like that much. And after watching that, I was kind of reminded of an older movie that I thought I remembered had a similar construct and a similar theme, and that is the movie called The Innocents from 1961. Now, what do you need to know about The Innocents? First of all, I hadn't seen it for about 35 years, and even then I think I'd only seen parts of it on TV, so I really didn't remember it. Unlike The Haunting, which is also from the 60s, black and white, kind of a haunting kind of movie, which I loved, The Innocents had never really stuck with me, so I thought I should go back and give it a try. The Innocents features Deborah Carr, who is probably best known from The King and I. And that's the main actor that I recognize from this movie from other roles. So here's the basic concept of the story. The story is about a governess played by Deborah Carr, and she is applying for a job. At the very beginning, you see her in that job interview. The man who hires her has a nephew and a niece, and the interesting part about it is right out of the gate, he says, they were orphaned, I was stuck with their charge, and I do not have any interest in taking care of these kids. So he says, basically, go out to my old estate, and that's where they're at. You can take care of them. You can run everything. If there's problems, take care of it. I don't want to hear about it. So essentially, he's washing his hands of these two kids and their responsibility of them, and he's leaving her to have all the responsibility. She seems up for the task, so she heads off to his, really very large estate out in the countryside. There's a housekeeper there and a couple other staff, but it's mostly going to be her deal when it comes to the kids. And when she gets there, pretty quickly, we discover that the children are very polite. Well, first of all, Flora is the daughter, and she's pretty young, 6, something like that. And the son is Niles, and he isn't there at first. So when she first gets there, it's just Flora. And after a little bit, Niles shows up because he has been expelled from his boarding school. And Niles is a few years older than Flora, so maybe he's around 9 or 10, probably. So anyway, both kids are ultra polite, but they're polite to a point that it seems forced and fake and starts getting very creepy. And I'm not going to spoil the movie, but the basic idea is that as it goes along, she is continuing to wonder whether the children are playing pranks on her and trying to freak her out and maybe drive her insane. Like, are they gaslighting her? Or is there something truly supernatural occurring at the estate? So that's kind of the crux of the movie. Now, one of the strengths of the movie, other than the kids, they're pretty good. In fact, the boy, and I should have looked up his name, but he earlier, or very around the same time, I guess, he played the main kid in Village of the Damned. So if you've seen those blonde, creepy kids, he's one of those kids. But one of the stars of this movie is honestly the cinematography, and it is amazing. It's by Freddie Francis, and it's black and white, but it's really glorious, and you just have to see it. If you like old, good black and white photography from this era, and there's a fair amount of it, movies like I said, The Haunting, Psycho, you can see some other examples in that era. This is right up there as far as the look of the world that is created by Freddie Francis. Now, a little later in that same decade, Freddie Francis went on to directed some movies for Hammer Studios. And then in the 80s and 90s, he went back and became really well known again for his cinematography. He did some really big movies. He did The Elephant Man. He also did The Straight Story, both obviously for David Lynch. And then he also did Glory, and he did the Cape Fear remake by Scorsese. So he's done some really great works that have been recognized as far as cinematography goes. And he is no less impeccable in The Innocents. So once again, other strengths in this movie, it has a great creep factor as it goes along. It's not a jump scare kind of movie, really. I mean, obviously it's older, so it's not going to be very extreme. But there are a couple things that even in this day are a bit disturbing, having to do with the way the children interact with the governess, and I'll kind of just leave it at that. Also, I'd like to mention really quickly, I mean, it's got the score. It's kind of an older score. The acting's a little mannered. You know, it's that kind of style you get back then. Probably the only knocks for the movie, maybe bringing it down to about a 4.5. Otherwise, this is right up in classic territory. I would also mention the sound design for the era is very complex, which is a little bit unusual. There's a ton of work with natural sounds, sounds of animals and insects and things going on in the environment that really add to the kind of the overall ambiance and the overall like feel of this estate, which is just incredible. I would highly recommend going back and finding The Innocents. DVD, if you can find it, would be great. It also is available, I believe, on DirecTV for streaming, and you can also find quite a few versions of it on YouTube in full. Pretty good quality, so you could even go that route. Once again, I will be back soon with a more recent movie.